I wasn't supposed to be home until Sunday. The plan was airtight: business trip to Atlanta, a weekend conference, and then a client dinner that Jocelyn pretended to be excited about. She even helped me pack, folding my shirts with that neat precision she was always proud of. "Can't have you looking like a tourist in a wrinkled button-up," she had joked. I kissed her on the forehead, said I'd be back late Sunday, and drove off like a man who believed everything in his life was exactly where it should be. But the client canceled last minute, a double-booked itinerary and a guilt-ridden assistant stammering apologies over the phone. I didn't mind. I took it as a sign from the universe. Maybe I needed the rest. A quiet weekend at home with Jocelyn sounded perfect. I imagined us grilling out back, maybe watching old movies in our sweatpants. I didn't call or text ahead. I wanted to surprise her. I didn't expect to find a suitcase waiting for me. It stood in the hallway like it had been expecting someone else to carry it out. Mine, same gray Samsonite roller with a cracked wheel and my initials stitched into the leather tag. I hadn't touched it in days, yet it looked freshly packed. The zipper was closed, the side handle turned outward like it had been deliberately staged. I froze at the threshold. Something wasn't right. The air smelled different, faint traces of cheap red wine and some unfamiliar cologne that clung to the walls like a guest who had overstayed. I walked in slowly, trying to make sense of the picture forming around me. Our usually spotless kitchen had a wine bottle half empty on the counter. 2 glasses in the sink. One had a smudge of lipstick. Jocelyn hadn't worn lipstick in weeks. Her phone was there too. Locked but still glowing from a fresh notification. "Nico Fire, had a great time. Miss you already." The screen went dark before I could see more, but the name stuck in my throat like a splinter. Nico? I didn't know a Nico. We didn't know a Nico. And whoever he was, he had left more than a text message behind. The whole house felt tainted, unsettled. I called out her name once. No answer. The living room was spotless, too spotless. Our framed wedding photo still sat on the mantel next to the candle she never lit. But something was missing. The warmth, the clutter, the casual signs of a life being lived. Instead, the room felt like a set that had been cleared after a performance. I walked upstairs, each step growing heavier. The bedroom door was open. Bed made. Drawers closed. But the rug, there was an earring on it. A silver hoop. Not Jocelyn's. Too large, too flashy. She preferred subtle studs or pearl drops. I stood there for a long moment, staring at that single piece of jewelry like it might answer the question my brain wasn't ready to ask. The front door clicked open downstairs. Her heels struck the hardwood with precision. I didn't move. "Oh, Grayson," her voice called up the stairs, surprised but a little too composed. "You're back." I stepped into the hallway, catching her eyes from above. "I thought you weren't coming home until Sunday," she added, already walking toward the kitchen like this was any normal afternoon. "Plans changed." She nodded slowly, letting the silence hang as she opened the fridge and poured herself water. Her dress was tight, low-cut, short hemline, dark red. It wasn't what she'd wear around the house. It wasn't what she'd wear for me. She didn't ask why I hadn't called. She didn't ask how the trip went. She didn't even ask if I was okay. Her eyes glanced toward the suitcase and then darted away, calculating. "You going somewhere?" I asked, gesturing toward the bag. "I was going to take it up. I thought I'd be helpful and get a head start on unpacking," she said with that sweet smile that never quite reached her eyes. It was a good lie. Polished. Practiced. The kind of lie that didn't stumble. But the thing about practiced lies is that they only exist when someone's had to use them before. I haven't even opened it since Tuesday. She didn't flinch. Maybe I got confused. I nodded slowly, letting her lie sit in the air between us like steam rising off boiling water. I walked past her into the living room and sat on the couch. She followed a beat later, standing stiff with her arms crossed. "So," she said finally, voice light. "Dinner?" "Sure. If you're not already full." That got a reaction. Just a flicker, her brow furrowed, her lips tightened, but then the mask went back on. "You're being dramatic." I laughed. Not because it was funny, but because the absurdity of the moment demanded some kind of release. "You left my suitcase by the door like I was being evicted and you think I'm being dramatic?" Her smile flattened. "I wasn't trying to upset you." "No?" I tilted my head. "So what were you trying to do?" She paused just for a second too long. "Just trying to keep things organized," she said. "That's all." I looked at her. Really looked. Her eyes were restless, darting to the side table, the kitchen clock, anywhere but my face. Her dress had a tiny snag at the hem. Her makeup, flawless except for the corner of one eyelash slightly lifted. She was still put together, but something was fraying underneath. "You look nice," I said, keeping my tone even. "Where were you tonight?" She blinked. Just out with Maya. We got drinks. You can call her if you want. I might. She nodded like she expected that. Like she was ready for it. Like she already had the story straight. I'm tired, she said finally. I think I'll shower. I didn't stop her. Just watched her disappear upstairs like a shadow slipping out of the room. When the water started running, I sat in silence, the ticking of the wall clock suddenly deafening. That night, I didn't sleep in our bed. I laid down on the couch, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself that what I saw, what I smelled, what I felt could all be explained away. That I was tired, overthinking. That maybe there really was an innocent reason for the second wine glass, the lipstick, the earring. But deep down, I knew better. Because she hadn't been surprised to see me. She had been scared. Not of what I might do, but of what I might already know. I didn't sleep that night. Not even for a second. I laid on the couch, staring at the ceiling while the shadows of passing cars stretched and shrank across the living room walls. Jocelyn didn't come down. She never texted. Never asked if I was okay or why I hadn't joined her in bed. And I didn't go up to ask what she was hiding because the moment had passed. Or maybe it had never really existed at all. Instead, I stayed there with my thoughts I tried to bury over the last few months, moments I had dismissed, questions I had swallowed to keep the peace. But in that silence, they started crawling back out one by one. Like how she had changed her phone password in April and casually told me she needed to be more secure at work. It was a small thing. But before that, we never had secrets, not the kind that needed locks. We used to scroll through each other's photos while watching TV. She used to hand me her phone without a second thought. Then suddenly it was always face down. Always on silent. Or the way she started skipping our Sunday dinners with my parents. At first, it was a headache. Then a project deadline. Then she said she didn't feel like pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. I thought she meant she was stressed. Overworked. Maybe depressed. I never guessed she meant she didn't want to be near me. Not really. Then there were the changes in her appearance. New lingerie she never wore around me. Waxing appointments. Spa days. Sudden interest in high-end makeup brands she used to roll her eyes at. She said she was just reclaiming her confidence, and I cheered her on. I wanted her to feel good. I just didn't realize someone else was making her feel good. She'd come home late, sometimes after I was already asleep. Her stories were airtight. Happy hour with coworkers. A late brainstorm session. Yoga and wine night with Maya. I believed her. Because believing her was easier than believing the alternative. But now, with the wine glasses in the sink and the scent of a stranger's cologne still hanging in our home, I couldn't ignore it anymore. There was a night, maybe 6 weeks ago, when I came home early from work because I had a stomach bug. Jocelyn wasn't expecting me. I walked in and she was on the patio talking on the phone. Laughing. Flirtatiously. When she saw me through the window, she hung up so fast it startled me. I asked who it was. She smiled and said it was Maya. I asked what was so funny. She said girl stuff and walked away. I let it go. I told myself it didn't matter. God, I was a fool. There had been other clues. Subtle at first. She'd stopped watching shows with me. She used to rest her head on my shoulder and make sarcastic little remarks during slow scenes. Then one day she just stopped coming into the living room after dinner. I figured she needed space. I didn't realize she was creating distance. Slowly. Deliberately. We used to talk before bed. About anything, our days, the neighbors, dumb things we saw online. That went too. First it was her being too tired, then it became, I need to read more before I sleep, and eventually it was just the quiet buzz of her Kindle screen in the dark, her back turned to me. I remember the first time she flinched when I reached for her waist. It wasn't a big gesture. I walked up behind her while she was doing dishes and tried to kiss her neck. She tensed and pulled away, muttering something about being hot from the water. I laughed it off. But she didn't laugh with me. She hadn't really laughed in a while. It was like she was leaving me in pieces and I hadn't noticed until most of her was already gone. And it wasn't just her behavior. It was her eyes. That part's hard to explain, but I felt it. The way she stopped looking at me. Not just glancing or avoiding, but really seeing me. When I talked, she would nod, but her gaze would drift toward her phone, the TV, anywhere but my face. Love doesn't vanish in a day. It unravels. Slowly. Silently. And I had been living inside that unraveling for months without even realizing it. There was one moment that haunted me now more than any other. Back in February, we'd gone away for a weekend in Asheville. It was meant to be a reconnecting trip, something she insisted on. She planned it, picked the Airbnb, even booked a couple's massage. The first night there, she disappeared into the bathroom for almost an hour. I knocked to make sure she was okay. She came out smiling, fresh-faced, her hair curled. Said she just needed some me time. We sat by the fireplace, sipping wine. She was warm, affectionate, even playful. That night felt like a reset. But now I remembered the way she had texted someone just before she went into the bathroom. The way she kept glancing at her phone as we talked. The long pause before she kissed me goodnight. That whole trip had been a performance. Not for me. For her conscience. For her guilt. Like she was checking a box before drifting further away. I pulled the throw blanket over me and closed my eyes, but sleep still wouldn't come. My chest ached, not from heartbreak, but from pressure. Like my lungs didn't have room to expand. Like the house was pressing in on me. Somewhere around 3 a.m. I got up and walked into the kitchen. Her phone was gone from the counter now. Probably tucked under her pillow upstairs. I poured a glass of water and leaned against the counter, staring at the empty sink. 2 glasses. One with lipstick. 2 bowls from dinner, mine and hers. But the dishes from earlier? The wine? The plates? Gone. She'd cleaned up. As if the evidence was temporary. As if I wasn't supposed to notice. But I did. And the worst part? She hadn't even looked surprised. Not when I walked through the door. Not when I asked about the suitcase. Not when I mentioned the wine. She had been preparing for this. Not the confrontation, maybe, but the collapse. The moment when the truth would finally creep into the light. She just didn't expect it to happen on a Friday night. I opened the fridge and stared inside, not even hungry. Her favorite yogurt sat on the top shelf, next to the expensive wine she always claimed was just for special occasions. Funny how it was still unopened. Back when we were dating, she used to say that love was about noticing the little things. Not the grand gestures, but the tiny details, the way someone refilled your coffee without asking or remembered how you take your eggs. I used to think that was beautiful. Now I realize those same little things could be used to hide the truth. To camouflage betrayal. To create just enough normalcy to keep the cracks from showing. I stood there until the fridge beeped from being open too long. Then I closed it, turned off the lights, and sat back on the couch. The clock ticked past 4. I didn't want to wake her. Didn't want to scream. I wasn't ready for a confrontation, not yet. But I knew this wasn't paranoia anymore. This wasn't insecurity or miscommunication. This was a pattern. A structure. A slow fade that had been months in the making. She hadn't been tired. She hadn't been stressed. She had been leaving. In pieces. And somehow I had missed every single one. Tuesday morning started like any other. Well, almost. I made coffee, but it tasted wrong. Bitter, oversteeped, maybe stale. I dumped it and didn't bother making more. I sat at the kitchen table, scrolling through the news, pretending I was a man who hadn't just spent the weekend unraveling his marriage in his head. Jocelyn was already gone, off to work early for a presentation downtown, her lips brushing my cheek in a gesture that felt more choreographed than genuine. "You okay?" she'd asked casually, slipping into her heels. "Fine," I'd said. She nodded, grabbed her bag, and left without another word. The moment the door clicked shut, I exhaled. Not because I was relieved, but because pretending for even 5 minutes had taken everything I had. I was still pretending when I got to work. I answered emails, nodded through meetings, smiled at coworkers. Nobody noticed anything off. Nobody ever does when you're a man quietly falling apart. Then, around noon, I realized I'd forgotten my keys. It was stupid. I almost didn't go home, thought about waiting until Jocelyn got back. But something pushed me. A nudge in my chest, like instinct, was dragging me by the collar. I told my manager I had a delivery coming and needed to be home for it. He didn't question it. 20 minutes later, I was back at our front door, knocking softly before I realized I didn't need to. We always left the side window unlocked. For emergencies. For forgetful mornings. I slid it open, climbed in, and froze. Her car was in the driveway. She was supposed to be in a meeting. Downtown. With clients. But her car was right there, tucked into the usual spot like it never left. The silence in the house was the kind that makes your ears ring. Still. Heavy. Wrong. I stepped carefully across the hardwood, the soft creak of the hallway floorboards making my heart beat louder. The bedroom door was ajar. Just barely. Enough to see inside without being seen. And that's when the lie collapsed. There they were, Jocelyn and a man I didn't recognize. Lying in her bed. My bed. The same bed where we celebrated anniversaries and whispered our plans for the future. His shirt was off. Her hand rested on his chest. She was laughing quietly in asterisk mately like I hadn't seen her laugh in months. They didn't see me. Not right away. And for a moment I couldn't move. Couldn't think. Couldn't breathe. I had imagined this moment before. Not exactly, but in abstract. What if she was cheating? What if there really was someone else? I pictured screaming. Rage. A shattered lamp. A door slammed so hard the walls shook. But the reality was quieter. Colder. I backed away without a sound, walked out the front door, and didn't stop moving until I was back in my car. My hands shook as I grabbed the steering wheel. I looked in the mirror, expecting to see a broken man staring back. Instead, I saw someone eerily calm. Like the worst had already happened and all that was left now was clarity. I didn't go back to work. I drove to a hotel a few miles away and checked into a room with nothing but a toothbrush and a charger from the gas station next door. Then I sat on the bed, stared at the wall, and opened my phone's notes app. I wrote everything down. Time of day. Description of the man. What they were wearing. Where I had been standing. What I had seen. Not because I planned to use it, but because part of me knew I might have to. Because lies unravel faster when there's a record of the truth. That evening, Jocelyn texted me. Hey, just checking in. How's your day? Red heart. I stared at the screen, while rising in my throat. How was my day? My day was watching the woman I loved lie in our bed with a stranger while I stood frozen in the doorway like a character in someone else's nightmare. My day was realizing that the past 6 months of distance and doubt weren't paranoia, they were evidence. I just hadn't looked closely enough. I didn't respond. Instead, I opened a search browser and typed in Family Attorney Charlotte, North Carolina. I wasn't going to confront her. Not yet. Not until I knew exactly what I was dealing with. Not until I had something more solid than a single sighting. I knew how this game worked. If I moved too fast, she'd play confused. Deny. Gaslight. Cry. I'd seen it happen to other guys. I wasn't going to be another story with a messy ending and no proof. I called a firm with 5 stars and explained the situation. They gave me a consultation for Thursday. I asked them about finances, about rights, about what to expect. The woman on the other end had a steady voice like she'd heard the story before, probably dozens of times. She said, "You're doing the right thing, Mr. Baines." Was I? It didn't feel like it. It felt like I was walking barefoot through glass, trying not to bleed too much before the end. That night, I didn't sleep again. I sat on the tiny hotel balcony watching headlights smear across the dark horizon. I wondered who he was. How long it had been going on. What lies she had told him about me, about us. Maybe she told him I was distant, controlling, boring. Maybe she said I traveled too much, didn't understand her anymore. Maybe she said I didn't love her. The thought made me laugh. Because God, I had loved her. With everything. And she'd used that love like camouflage. I started collecting evidence the next morning. Quietly. Methodically. I changed my banking alerts. Started forwarding statements to a private email account. Canceled the credit card we shared and requested a new one in my name only. She didn't even notice. The real blow came a few days later when I checked our joint credit history and noticed a pattern: restaurant bills, hotel stays, flights booked under a name I didn't recognize. N. Graham. Nico. It wasn't just cheating. It was calculated. And maybe that was the part that broke me the most. She hadn't made a mistake. This wasn't an impulsive night of bad judgment. This was a methodical, sustained betrayal. A whole second life built in the margins of our real one. And I had been nothing more than the background character in her escape plan. Back at the house, she didn't suspect a thing. She kissed me goodnight like always. Asked how work was. Made jokes about the dog from across the street. Wore my old sweatshirt one evening, curled up on the couch like we were still us. But I watched her differently now. Watched the lies swim behind her eyes. Watched her phone light up and stay hidden. Watched her speak in that soft, even tone she only used when she was covering something. I recorded what I could. Phone bills. Receipts. Her calendar. The dates didn't lie. Neither did the email confirmations I found in the trash folder of our shared Gmail account. And when she asked why I was quiet one morning over coffee, I said, "Just tired." But I wasn't tired. I was done. She just didn't know it yet. There's a moment, after you've seen what you can't unsee, after the weight of betrayal finally lands, when numbness gives way to strategy. That's where I was. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to hurt her back. But I wasn't about to let myself be blindsided again. Not legally. Not financially. Not emotionally. The attorney I met with, Susan Gold, was sharp, calm, and about 10 steps ahead of wherever my thoughts were trying to go. She'd seen it all, she said. People think infidelity is just emotional, just about love. But it's business too. Property, debt, reputation. You don't just walk away from a marriage. You navigate it like a minefield. We met in her corner office overlooking downtown Charlotte. She offered me tea, which I didn't drink, and asked me to explain everything. So I did. I told her about the suitcase, the wine glasses, the earring, Jocelyn's quiet shifts, her new wardrobe, the phone calls cut short, the man in our bed. I showed her the receipts I'd pulled from our joint account, fancy dinners, out-of-state charges, Uber rides from places I'd never heard of. I handed over printouts of the airline tickets booked under N. Graham, complete with travel dates that overlapped with weekends she claimed were girls' trips. Susan took notes, nodding slowly, never interrupting. When I finally stopped talking, she tapped the edge of her pen against her notepad. So, she said, we build a paper trail. We started immediately. Step 1 was financial. I opened a new checking account under my name and moved half of our liquid assets into it. Legally permissible in our state as long as I wasn't hiding it. I closed access to the old account with a simple transfer lock. Changed passwords. Froze the joint credit card. Requested all bank statements from the past year, just in case. Jocelyn noticed within 48 hours. Hey, she said, casually one night as we were folding laundry. Did the credit card stop working? I tried to buy something online and it declined. I didn't look up from the shirt I was folding. Might be flagged. I'll check. She nodded and went back to her stack. She didn't press. Not yet. Step 2 was documentation. Susan's office helped me file a formal record of suspected marital misconduct, just in case things escalated. It wasn't an accusation. Not yet. Just a filing that preserved the option for an at-fault divorce, which our state still permitted. It allowed us to issue subpoenas later if we needed to. Cell phone logs, bank transactions, testimonies. We logged everything. Her work schedule, the dates she claimed to be with friends, times I'd seen her texting Nico, every unexplained charge. Every night she came home smelling like cheap wine and department store cologne. The deeper I looked, the more obvious it became. There were patterns. He didn't just appear. He was part of a routine. The same hotel in Charleston, twice in 2 months. The same restaurant in Southend, charged under her name, always at odd hours, always with 2 entrees and a bottle of Malbec. She thought she was covering her tracks. She had no idea I was collecting them. Susan connected me with a private investigator. I'll call him Theo. He was quiet, polite, and terrifyingly efficient. I handed him the timeline and said, just confirm it. I need to be sure. 3 days later, he sent me a file. Inside were photos, time-stamped, dated. Jocelyn and Nico outside a boutique hotel. Jocelyn getting into a car with him. Jocelyn at a rooftop bar, laughing, her hand brushing against his. It was the same dress she wore when she claimed she was at her friend's birthday party. The file also included *TS of Nico's online profiles. He wasn't invisible. In fact, he was all over social media, just not under his full name. His real name was Nicholas Graham. Mid-30s, marketing consultant. According to Theo, he had a history of brief, intense relationships with women who looked a lot like Jocelyn. There was even a forum thread about him on a site I'd never heard of. Women warning others about his manipulative charm and financial schemes. That's when I understood something important. This wasn't just about Jocelyn cheating. This was about Jocelyn being played. She hadn't left me for a soulmate. She'd handed herself over to a predator. The clarity was a strange comfort. I started sleeping better, not because it hurt less, but because the path forward was now lit. I planned my exit quietly. I moved small items out of the house each day. A few books, a framed photo of my parents, things she wouldn't notice. I arranged for mail forwarding. I opened a P.O. box. I even made sure to change the beneficiaries on my life insurance, which she had been listed on since the wedding. She still didn't suspect anything. She was floating in the illusion of control. One night, I found a bottle of that same cheap red wine in the pantry. The same kind she used to drink before I introduced her to better stuff. She'd gone back to it. It made me laugh. Not because it was funny, but because it was so clearly tied to him. Their routine was ours now. I was just the one paying for it. There was one last thing I needed before I was ready. I wanted to talk to her. Not to accuse. Not to explode. Just to see if she'd admit it. It was a Sunday evening. She'd made dinner, spaghetti, store-bought sauce, garlic bread from a bag. She was wearing leggings and one of my hoodies. It would have felt normal 2 months ago. Now it felt staged. I saw something weird on the bank statement, I said casually. She froze for half a second. Oh, yeah. Charges from Charleston. I thought you said you were in Asheville that weekend. She blinked, just once. Oh yeah, we ended up changing plans. Maya wanted to go to the coast instead. Did I not tell you? No. She smiled tightly. Sorry. It was kind of a last-minute thing. I nodded. Sure. She turned back to the sink. That was it. No guilt. No panic. Just a pivot. Practiced one. That's when I knew. She wouldn't confess. She'd ride this out until she thought she was safe. Then she'd make her move. Maybe ask for a separation. Maybe invent a story about falling out of love. Maybe blame me for being distant. But I wasn't giving her the chance. That night I printed the photos. Not to show her. Not yet. But to remind myself that this wasn't a dream. That I wasn't paranoid. That I hadn't imagined the distance. The silence. The unraveling. It was all real. And the evidence lived in my filing cabinet now, neatly labeled. Ready for court if it came to that. She wasn't going to take the house. She wasn't going to take the narrative. Not anymore. I was ready. She was not. It started with an email. Subject line, "You don't know me, but we need to talk." First, I almost deleted it. Another scam, I figured. The sender's name didn't ring any bells. Catherine Gray. But something about the tone of the message felt too specific, too personal to be random. My thumb hovered over the trash icon. Then I opened it. Hi Grayson. I know this is unexpected, and I wouldn't be reaching out if it weren't important. My name is Catherine Gray. I was in a relationship with a man named Nicholas Graham. I believe he is now involved with your wife, Jocelyn. I have information I think you deserve to know. I stopped breathing for a moment. My eyes jumped back to the name. Nicholas Graham. Nico. That tiny fire emoji next to his name on her phone made more sense now. Catherine had included her phone number. Against my better judgment, I texted her. This is Grayson Baines. I got your email. Can we talk? The reply came almost instantly. Yes, please. I've been waiting for you to reach out. We spoke that evening. Over the phone. Each word threading together a story I didn't want to hear but couldn't stop listening to. Catherine's voice was calm, measured, but there was pain under every syllable. She had met Nicholas through a mutual friend. He was charming, attentive, mysterious in a way that made him seem deeper than he was. He told her he'd had his heart broken, that he wasn't looking for anything serious, but she was different. He made her feel chosen. Then came the isolation, the inconsistencies, the vanishing ex. He's a professional, Catherine said. That's the only way I can describe it. He's not just a cheater. He studies people, finds what they need to hear and gives it to them. She told me how he had borrowed money from her, lied about a job offer in Seattle, promised to take her to meet his parents, who, she later learned, didn't even live where he claimed. I tried to leave him, she said, but he always pulled me back, always knew exactly what to say. By the time I realized who he really was, I'd lost 2 years, a savings account, and half my self-worth. My grip tightened around the phone. Why are you telling me this? I asked. There was a pause. Because I wish someone had warned me, and because you're not the only one. After I got out, I started connecting the dots. There are others. Women he's done this to. Some just emotionally. Others, worse. She forwarded me links to forums, private threads, old social posts. Stories eerily similar to mine. Same routines. Same lies. Same sudden disappearances once the relationship stopped serving him. And then one final message. I'm sorry this happened to you, but you're not crazy. You're not alone. I stared at my phone long after we hung up. It was surreal. Jocelyn wasn't just cheating. She was being manipulated, used by someone who made a career out of emotional hit-and-runs. I should have felt vindicated, or maybe smug, but all I felt was emptiness. She had hurt me, yes. She had lied, betrayed, humiliated me. But now I saw the bigger picture. Jocelyn wasn't just a betrayer. She was also a target. It didn't excuse anything, but it changed something. 2 days later, she called me. I was back at the lake house, sorting through old boxes, trying to figure out which version of my life I wanted to rebuild. Her name flashed across my screen. I stared at it until it stopped ringing. Then again. Then a text. Grayson, please. Can we talk? I need to see you. She didn't know I'd already seen everything. That I had the photos, the receipts, the attorney, the file from the private investigator. And now the story from Catherine. I didn't answer. Instead, I opened my laptop and reviewed the photos one more time. Jocelyn on the rooftop with Nico, her hand in his mouth near her ear. She was smiling, genuinely, I think. But there was something hollow in it now. I could see it only because I knew what came next. Nicholas Graham was a ghost. Theo had tried to track him again after my conversation with Catherine. The last trace of him was a motel charge under a different alias. Then nothing. Phone number deactivated. Social accounts deleted. His LinkedIn, stripped down to a single line. Independent consultant. Theo said he'd seen it before. Guys like Nico never stayed too long. Once things got complicated, once feelings started getting real or people started asking questions, they disappeared. He's probably already working on the next one, he said. They always are. By the end of that week, Jocelyn showed up at the house. I heard her car before I saw her. The gravel crunching under tires. I didn't move from the porch. Just watched her walk up the path. Slower than usual. As if the air was thicker for her now. She looked different. Not worse. Not unrecognizable. Just stripped of something. Her eyes were tired. Her posture drawn inward. She wasn't wearing makeup. No dress. Just jeans and a plain hoodie. She stopped a few feet from the steps. Grayson, she said. Please. I didn't respond. I didn't know who he really was, she said. I swear. I thought I did. I thought I don't know what I thought. Silence. Did he leave? I asked finally. She blinked. How do you? I know. Her shoulders dropped. Everything. Everything. She sat down on the steps without asking. Just lowered herself like gravity had finally won. I'm so sorry, she said quietly. I didn't mean to ruin everything. I stayed standing. I know it doesn't matter now, she added. But I wasn't going to stay with him. I saw what he was. I was going to end it. I didn't know how. I nodded. I believed her. In a way, I believed all of it. But that didn't change what she had done. I handed her a folder. Inside were copies of the financial documents, the legal papers, a letter from my attorney. Everything clean, prepared, precise. I'm not asking for anything, I said. No alimony, no court fight. I just want my life back. She looked down at the papers, her eyes scanning them quickly. You've really thought this through. I've had time. She nodded. I'll sign, she said. And just like that, it was done. No shouting. No tears. Just two people standing at the edge of the life they built, finally admitting it was over. She stayed a few more minutes, said something about packing her things next week. I told her I'd be gone. She nodded again, then left. I watched her drive away for the last time, and the silence that followed wasn't empty. It was clean. Nicholas Graham vanished like a mirage. No forwarding address, no phone number, no social trace. It was as if the man Jocelyn had risked everything for had never really existed. She tried to file a police report, but there wasn't much to go on. Nothing was technically stolen. No formal agreements, no contracts, no clean paper trail. Just her trust, her privacy, and a few maxed-out credit cards. She didn't just lose him. She lost everything tethered to him. Her job let her go shortly after. A breach of internal files linked back to her personal email, documents she'd sent, for review, to someone using a dummy address. It didn't take long for HR to connect the dots. She walked out with a cardboard box and no severance. That same day, her car broke down. A week later, her lease renewal was denied after she fell behind on payments. The apartment, the one I had moved out of, was now too expensive for her to keep alone. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I didn't even watch. By then, I had stepped away completely. The divorce finalized quickly. No assets contested. No property battles. I asked for nothing except for my name off every joint document. She signed without protest. Maybe she knew she didn't have the ground to stand on anymore. She remained in the apartment until the end of the lease, living in the shell of the life she'd carved out of our marriage. Friends drifted away. The ones she'd lied to on his behalf no longer returned her calls. Even Maya stopped showing up. She had made her choices and now she had to live with the consequences. I heard once that a house only collapses after its foundation rots. Jocelyn had spent months hiding the cracks, painting over the warning signs. But eventually, the whole structure gave way. Quietly. Completely. I didn't feel hate anymore. I didn't even feel vindicated. I just felt finished. The lake house had always been my favorite place before it became ours. I bought it years before we married on a whim, back when I thought solitude was a luxury. After the divorce, I returned with only a few bags and the kind of silence I used to be afraid of. It didn't take long to reclaim the space. I painted the kitchen cabinets, replaced the worn rugs, and filled the bookshelves with the novels I'd once had to store in boxes. I learned to cook properly, meals that didn't come from a microwave or takeout app. I watched storms roll over the water and let the quiet stretch as long as it needed to. One afternoon, I walked into a small bookshop in town, the kind with creaky floors and mismatched chairs by the window. I was looking for a book I had lost in the move when I saw her browsing the same shelf, holding the same title. She smiled first. Her name was Elise. Soft voice, thoughtful eyes. We struck up a conversation about the author, then another about favorite stories, and then somehow about silence. She had been through her own unraveling, not a divorce, but a different kind of heartbreak. The kind that doesn't make headlines but still hollows you out. We didn't rush anything. No grand confessions. No trauma bonding. Just coffee and long walks and a shared understanding that some people enter your life not to fix it but to walk beside you while you rebuild it yourself. I never told her much about Jocelyn. She never pushed. And in that mutual restraint there was healing. It wasn't a fairy tale. It wasn't fireworks. It was quiet. And for the first time in a long time, that was more than enough.